Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, March 14th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, March Madness for real starts tomorrow. I know we've had, the play-in games and whatnot, but really tomorrow is when it gets rolling. Thursday games, Buckeyes, they'll play at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, TNT against South Dakota State. I thought, we talked about the win probability on ESPN and all that, the basketball power index. I thought it might be like 70% for Ohio State. It's actually 80.2%. Ohio State has a win probability of 80.2%. What do you make of that, Bax? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Everybody's making this big deal out of, they're the 5 seed, upset city, or, South Dakota's, that's our neck of the woods, right? Well, I'm sitting here like, okay, A, just because you're a 5 seed doesn't mean you're going to lose. And B, South Dakota is nowhere near Boise. It's as close to Boise as Miami is to Columbus. Like, it's 1,000 miles away. So it's not like they have a home court advantage. And then you look at the team that South Dakota State has. Look, they're a good team, don't get me wrong. But the teams that win in the NCAA tournament are usually the ones that have great guard play, right? South Dakota State I wouldn't classify as a team that has really great guard play. I think it's a decent matchup for OSU. One of their best players is their 6'9" center. It doesn't make them that big, right? So I think OSU's in okay shape in the first round. I like the Buckeyes in this one, and not as a homer because I know I'm well aware of my tendency to pick OSU to go way too far. And I can tell you right now, the next round against Gonzaga for what's a closer to home game for them is frustrating for Ohio State. That's one I don't know if they get by, but I do think that this first round is a good matchup for the Buckeyes. And I do think Chris Holtman gets a turning win in his first year in the tournament for Ohio State's coach. How far do you have the Buckeyes going? This is it. They win this one, and I think Gonzaga knocks them off. Look, you remember all the way back to Thad Matta's second year, right? Thad didn't make the tournament the first year, right? And then the second year they come flying in on the giant behind of Terrence Dials to a 2 seed, right? And they lost in the second round. And it wasn't because that they weren't a good team, right? But it was because that team hadn't been in the tournament before. They had exceeded expectations massively that year, and they ran into a very solid mid-seeded team in Georgetown that year, and that was all she wrote. We were hoping for Sweet 16 that year, right? They ended up losing in the second round. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like this team, man. None of these guys practically have played in the tournament before. All of them have massively exceeded expectations already this year. So at the end of the day, I think Gonzaga's a better team. They're in a better, closer to home court advantage sort of situation. And there's no shame in Ohio State being a 5 seed, winning a game and losing in the second round in a year where, again, we were talking, if you told me they were the 5th seed in the Big Ten at the start of the year, I would have laughed at you, much less in the entire country in one of the regions, right? So this is a great year no matter what. They're playing with house money, but I don't think they get past the round of 32 against Gonzaga. Before we turn our attention to football, a lot of smoke about Thad Matta to Georgia. What do you make of that? Well, Thad's brother is a coach in the state of Georgia in high school basketball. It's an automatic in for him. And I think this is a great fit for what Thad is going to do the rest of his career, which is if you're Thad Matta, you can't take over an elite program. You can't go to one of those schools where they're going to be able to recruit against you on health and every little thing's a giant deal and the stress is through the roof, right? A school like Georgia where, oh, my gosh, we made the tournament this year. What an amazing year is their level of acceptance. Then Thad is perfectly set up there. He'll get into the tournament every 2 or 3 years, and they'll be respectable. They won't be a national championship kind of team. It'll be relatively low pressure for him. His brother's an easy in recruiting. I think it's a good fit if Thad wants to take it. And let's face it, Thad didn't really want to leave. I think his time was just up in Columbus. So Thad taking another job for another 5 or 6 years and maybe taking him to a tournament 2 or 3 times is a realistic outcome of what you expect from that program mixed with Thad Matta at this point in his career. All right, football. Buckeyes are off this week with spring break, but let's talk some football. Let's talk a couple of guys on the defensive line that have bulked up and
we'll see what they can do as juniors this season. Jonathon Cooper, a true junior. Jashon Cornell, a fourth-year junior. Let's start with Jonathon Cooper. He's up to 257 pounds. He was about 215 pounds soaking wet when he enrolled, a couple years ago. So Jonathon Cooper at least is going to be the number 3 defensive end, like the first guy off the bench. He's battling with Chase Young to be the starter opposite Nick Bosa. Have to think Chase Young is going to win that job, but you never know. But just what are your expectations for Jonathon Cooper this season, Bax?
Well, I think he's going to be a backup. Let's make that clear. I don't think you're going to have the same level of rotation that we saw last year with the ridiculous amount of depth OSU had. I think it's pretty clear Chase Young and Nick Bosa are going to be on the field as a starter. But Jonathon Cooper is the number 3 defensive end right now with a bullet. It's nice Jashon Cornell switched positions. I do like to see him on the field. He played well at times last year. I'm excited to see him, don't get me wrong. But Cooper's the guy who, if either Young or Bosa isn't able to be on the field, he's the one you're going to want on there. And I think with all this weight gain we've seen from him, he still maintained his explosiveness, right? So if that continued from this past season through this offseason to where we are now, then he's going to be terrifying. And it's just another great defensive end for Ohio State and a long line of great defensive ends at Ohio State. The truth of the matter is, Dave, when was the last time we were worried about our D-line at OSU? I really don't remember. It's been so long since I looked at the D-line and went, ooh, right? I mean, of all positions at OSU, I couldn't be less concerned because you have guys like Jonathon Cooper or guys like Jashon Cornell who just, by the way, was at one point the number 1 player in the country as a junior when he was coming out of high school, and, he fell down the rankings a little bit. But these are the guys OSU is pulling out of their depth, right? So I think Cooper's going to have a nice year this year. I think he's the clear backup to the top 2 guys. But he's a star. He's the kind of guy who in a year or two, whenever Nick Bosa is off to the NFL, it'll probably be Cooper opposite Chase Young, and we'll be lamenting that both of them are about to go pro early. That's just what the defensive ends at Ohio State do.
I said a couple guys bulking up. Jashon Cornell, of course, is shedding weight. Jonathon Cooper bulking up, as we said. Jashon Cornell is actually dropping weight. He's dropped about 10 pounds. He's moving from defensive tackle to defensive end. So we'll see what Jashon Cornell can do as a fourth-year junior. I mean, it looks like he is just almost a lock for that, fourth and final spot on the 2 deep at defensive end, behind Bosa, behind Chase Young, behind Jonathon Cooper, and boom, right there is Jashon Cornell. And, he refers to himself as the Punisher, the guy that's really going to get physical with opposing tight ends and opposing offensive tackles. What do you expect out of Jashon Cornell this season?
I expect him to be solid. I don't know if I expect him to be spectacular, but I do think he's going to play very, very well. Like I said last year, in limited reps, when we saw him on the field as a defensive tackle, he provided pretty decent penetration. He was pretty stout against the run. There was a lot of positives to Jashon Cornell for the first time in his OSU career. So he's a fourth-year junior now, which means you got 2 more years, theoretically, of Cornell on this team. That's not a bad thing at all when you're talking about a solid, good defensive end. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be like Tyquan Lewis or as good as Tyquan Lewis, but Tyquan Lewis was a solid, good defensive end at OSU, right? If Cornell can be a Tyquan light, we're in great shape, especially for a guy who's 4th in the depth chart. But, I generally think that a guy like Cornell switching over, yes, it's out of need because there's not a ton of depth. But I also think he was the best suited for it based on his frame and based on the game he plays. So I'm optimistic about both Cooper and Cornell. I think there's a lot of teams in the Big Ten who would love to have either one of them as a defensive end on their team. And, again, that kind of speaks to the strength that Ohio State has in the defensive line right now.
Really quick on recruiting. Earlier this week, Bill Kurelic crystal balled quarterback Grant Gunnell to the Buckeyes. When Bill Kurelic puts a crystal ball in, that is as close to a lock as you can get. Grant Gunnell, 6'6", 212 pounds already, from Houston, Texas, St. Pius X High School. Again, the Buckeyes going down to Texas, that the various pipelines down there that Urban Meyer's opened up. Grant Gunnell is ranked as the number 2 pro-style quarterback in the country in the 2019 class, number 53 overall, a very high 4-star prospect. Again, this isn't official yet that he's going to be a Buckeye, but man, when Bill Kurelic puts the dean of Ohio State football recruiting puts his crystal ball in, I mean, like I said, that's about as close as you can get to a lock. So Grant Gunnell looks like he's going to be a Buckeye backs. I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah,
there's a couple things to take out of this. One, Bill is notoriously conservative about his picks. He doesn't pull it. Bill is the guy who, when it's if he's playing Wheel of Fortune, he goes all the way down to the last letter before he makes his pick, right? Like, so if Bill's saying Grant Gunnell is in, it's pretty much a lock, all right? So I feel really optimistic about that. Now let's go from the position of saying that he is in. There's a few things to unpack. One, Tom Herman just lost one of the top kids in the entire country from his home state. Jimbo Fisher, who is now the Texas A&M coach, just lost one of the top kids in the country from his home state. Both of those guys, that's not a good sign for them. And then the second thing, and kind of more pressing thing that this says, is that if Ohio State is going down to Texas for the second straight year to land a tall, pro-style quarterback with a rocket arm, what does that tell you about their thoughts on the future of the offense here at Ohio State? That tells you very clearly that the kind of offense they want to run is not the offense that we saw under J.T. Barrett. Now, if that's the case, and you look at the current quarterback battle, there's really only one conclusion that you can come up with as to the outcome of that quarterback battle. Ohio State isn't recruiting the dual threat guys the last 2 years if it comes that you have this second elite pro-style kind of guy following Matthew Baldwin next year. So a guy like Tate Martell may have a role running the ball out of the backfield as a changeup going forward, but I don't think you're going to see the zone read anymore as the predominant feature of the OSU offense. And if that's the case, then you have Ohio State taking a big paradigm shift at quarterback and on the offense in general, one that many of us were screaming about for most of last year, and it pretty clearly indicates that Dwayne Haskins has the exact same skill set that Ohio State may be looking for its future and likely now current offense. So there's a lot to unpack here. But based on recruiting, I mean, that's your future in recruiting, right? Recruiting is where your team is going. And Ohio State's recruiting pro-style quarterbacks. That's kind of all I need to know about the situation at this point.
Great stuff, as always, from Matt Baxendell. Before I let you go, for those that don't know, Bax is the owner of a ticket company here in Columbus, Minuteman Tickets. This is not a paid advertisement. I just want to do a solid for my buddy here, and this is good for all the fans out there. This is, I'll let him explain it, but there's a free promotion he's doing with his ticket company with March Madness that they're calling it Minuteman Madness, of course, with it being Minuteman Tickets. That's really cool. There's all kinds of prizes you can win, and again, it's free, and you can get to know Bax's company a little bit. I'll turn the floor over to you, my friend. Tell people about Minuteman Madness at Minuteman Tickets. How can people sign up, and just tell them all about that, Bax.
Yeah, so a lot of Bucknuts listeners have known me for a long time through the writing that I do or the podcast or radio appearances, right? And a fair number of you have actually bought tickets from me in the past, too, so thank you. But kind of one of the things Minuteman Tickets did, one of the reasons that the guy who owned the company with Scott and myself started the company was because we were sick of all kinds of shadiness and sketchiness in the ticketing world. You go to a website and you think you're spending $50 a ticket and you check out and it's all of a sudden $90 a ticket or something crazy like that. We don't do that stuff. You give us a call and if I tell you a ticket's $100, it's $100. I'm not going to charge you $150 for it and throw in some bullcrap service fees on top of it if you call me direct. And what you're referring to, Dave, Minuteman Madness is kind of one of our big things we do every year. And it's sort of a thank you to all of our customers, sort of a fun thing we like to, get involved with to reach more new customers. And it's a March Madness bracket, plain and simple. But the prizing we do is pretty epic. This year's first prize is a all-expense-paid trip to Boston for 4 games at Fenway Park in August. It's going to be a very good series if you're a fan of Ohio baseball. I'm not technically allowed to say any team names for fear of cease and desist letters, but I think everybody can figure out what I'm talking about there. Second prize is
the Columbus Clippers are going to be playing the Red Sox. Columbus Clippers against the Red Sox. No, that's not what you're talking about. Go ahead. Sorry.
Lincoln High School? No. And then the second prize is a trip to Las Vegas. Again, this is a free contest, guys. I'm not taking a dime for this. This is advertising and a thank you for everybody who's been a part of supporting Minuteman Tickets. But second prize is Las Vegas. We're going to go to a hockey game in Vegas next year. It's a hockey game that will be involving a team that is near and dear to many people in this part of the country's hearts as well. I'll be going on that trip with you because I'm a Vegas fiend. So it's a bit of an all-expense paid except for your gambling guided trip. And those are just the top 2 prizes. There's trips to Cleveland. There's a trip that Bucknuts fans will be a really big fan of on October 20th this upcoming fall. Again, I can't say the team names, but people on Bucknuts will really appreciate this trip. And then there's 100 total prizes. So it's free to enter, and it's kind of, I think, a no-brainer. If you're into March Madness, give us a shot at Minuteman Tickets if you're looking for event tickets, but please sign up for March Madness with us at MinutemanMadness.com because it's pretty much the best prizing you can possibly find. and it's the biggest one that we've ever put on this year. So we're really stoked about it. And, again, that's MinutemanMadness.com. And I guess thank you in advance to everybody who will support us and has supported us in the past. And, again, I didn't pay Biddle to do this. He seems to be nice enough to let me to bring it on here. So thank you as well, Dave. And if you win one of the prizes in March Madness, I hear you're giving it away, or is that just to your wife, not to the listeners?
Yes, if I win, I have signed up, and you don't put your credit card information in or anything. You just sign up like you would for a free bracket on Yahoo or ESPN or anything else. I've signed up. If I win, I will give whatever my prize is to a Bucknuts listener, a Bucknuts Morning 5 listener, or a Bucknuts subscriber. So if I win, my prize is going to – my wife's going to kill me for saying that, especially if it's a trip to Vegas, but that's how it's going to be. I'm going to give it away to a Bucknuts subscriber. Thank you very much to the People's Champ, Baxendell, and thanks to all listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.